My beloved child, don't skip this message. Stay until the very end because today's story may speak to the deepest questions your heart has been carrying. There are moments in life when waiting feels endless. You pray. You hope. You wonder if anyone truly sees the tears you've cried when no one else was around. You ask God why some doors remain closed while others seem to open so easily for everyone else. If you've ever whispered, "Lord, am I forgotten?" then listen carefully. What you're about to hear is not a story about perfect timing, it is a story about perfect preparation. And what happened next changed everything. For a long time, you believed every delay was a disappointment. Every goodbye felt permanent. Every unanswered prayer seemed like silence from heaven. But what if those delays were protecting you instead of punishing you? What if every relationship that ended, every opportunity that slipped away, and every season of loneliness was quietly preparing your heart for something far greater than you could imagine? Don't skip this part, because this changes everything. While you were asking God for answers, He was shaping your character. He was teaching patience when you wanted immediate results. He was building wisdom through disappointment, compassion through heartbreak, and strength through seasons that felt unbearably long. Looking back, you will one day realize that the waiting was never empty. Every difficult chapter was teaching you lessons that would become the foundation of a relationship built on honesty, kindness, forgiveness, and unwavering faith. Now imagine someone else walking through a very similar journey. They have experienced their own heartbreaks, their own unanswered questions, and their own quiet prayers. They have spent nights asking God to prepare them for the person they are truly meant to cherish. They have learned that real love isn't found through chasing perfection but through becoming a person who can love with humility, patience, and grace. Unknown to both of you, your separate journeys have been shaping you into people capable of building something lasting. Don't skip this moment. One evening, after another ordinary day, that person quietly closed their eyes and prayed, "Lord, if there is someone you are preparing for me, help me become the kind of person who will protect their heart, encourage their dreams, and reflect your love through my actions." It wasn't a prayer asking for instant answers. It was a prayer asking for transformation. And sometimes the greatest miracles begin not when circumstances change, but when hearts begin to change. Listen carefully, because something beautiful started happening after that prayer. Bit by bit, fear gave way to faith. Bit by bit, bitterness was replaced with forgiveness. They stopped searching for someone to complete them and instead focused on becoming someone who could love faithfully, communicate honestly, and remain steadfast through every season of life. Without realizing it, the same quiet work was taking place in your own heart. This story isn't about finding a perfect person. It is about two imperfect people allowing God to shape them into wiser, kinder, stronger individuals before their paths cross. The greatest blessing is not simply meeting someone special. It is becoming someone who is ready to receive and nurture that blessing with humility and love. Stay until the very end because the next chapter reveals the moment when two separate journeys begin moving toward one unforgettable meeting. The timing will seem ordinary to everyone else, but for the two hearts involved, it will become the beginning of a story they will remember for the rest of their lives. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Stay until the very end because the story is about to reveal why every delay had a purpose. While you were wondering why life seemed to move so slowly, God was quietly working in places your eyes could not see. There were conversations you never heard, decisions you never witnessed, and circumstances changing beyond your understanding. You thought heaven was silent, but heaven was preparing. You believed nothing was happening, yet every ordinary day was moving both stories closer together. Listen carefully, because what happened next became the beginning of something neither heart could have planned alone. On the other side of this story, the person God was preparing was walking through a season that changed everything. They had once chased relationships built on appearances, excitement, and temporary emotions, only to discover that none of those things could satisfy the deepest longing of the heart. Every disappointment became a lesson. Every goodbye taught them humility. Every season of loneliness taught them to depend on God more than their own understanding. Slowly, they stopped asking God to send the right person and started asking Him to transform their own heart first. Don't skip this moment. One quiet evening, after another long day, they opened their Bible and began reading words they had read many times before. Yet that night, those verses felt different. They realized that God wasn't withholding blessings from them. He was preparing them to become someone who could protect those blessings with wisdom, patience, and unconditional love. Tears filled their eyes as they whispered, "Lord, help me become the person you want me to be before I ask for the person I'm praying for." That simple prayer marked the beginning of a transformation no one else could see. Meanwhile, your own journey continued in ways that often felt confusing. There were moments when you questioned whether your prayers had been heard. There were nights when you wondered why answers seemed delayed. But each challenge was quietly shaping your faith. God was teaching you to trust Him even when the path ahead remained hidden. He was strengthening your character through every setback, teaching forgiveness through every disappointment, and reminding you that His timing is never rushed, yet never late. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. Without either of you realizing it, your lives began moving closer together through ordinary circumstances. A decision that seemed insignificant. A conversation that almost never happened. A change in plans that once felt disappointing. Each small event became another step in a journey guided by purpose rather than coincidence. Looking back years later, you would recognize how even the smallest details had quietly led both of you toward the same destination. Days turned into weeks, and both of your hearts continued changing. Pride slowly gave way to humility. Fear was replaced by faith. Past hurts no longer controlled your future because healing had begun where bitterness once lived. You both learned that lasting love isn't built on perfection. It is built on grace, honesty, patience, forgiveness, and the willingness to place God at the center of every decision. Those lessons became the greatest preparation either of you could have received. Don't skip this part. Then came a day that seemed completely ordinary. Neither of you woke up expecting anything unusual to happen. Yet heaven often works through ordinary moments rather than extraordinary displays. A simple invitation. An unexpected conversation. A familiar place. A brief encounter that could easily have been overlooked by everyone else. But in God's hands, ordinary moments often become life-changing memories. As your paths drew closer than ever before, neither of you fully understood why your hearts suddenly felt filled with peace instead of uncertainty. The waiting that once seemed unbearable no longer felt like wasted time. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every difficult season was beginning to make sense. God had not forgotten either of you. He had been writing a story that required patience, growth, and trust before the next chapter could begin. Stay until the very end because the biggest moment is still ahead. In the next chapter, two separate journeys finally intersect in a way neither of you expected. One conversation, one unexpected meeting, and one quiet act of kindness will begin a relationship that reflects faith, hope, compassion, and the beautiful truth that sometimes God's greatest blessings arrive only after He has prepared both hearts to receive them. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Stay until the very end because this chapter reveals how God can use ordinary moments to accomplish extraordinary purposes. There was no loud announcement. No dramatic sign appeared across the sky. No one around you realized that two lives were quietly moving toward a moment that had been prepared through years of growth, healing, and faith. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary day. But sometimes God's greatest works begin in the most ordinary moments. Listen carefully, because what happened next would become a memory both of you would treasure for the rest of your lives. That morning began like countless others. You woke up, completed your usual routine, and stepped into the responsibilities waiting before you. Nothing seemed unusual. On the other side of the city, the person whose heart had also been shaped through seasons of waiting was beginning their day with the same ordinary expectations. Neither of you knew that one small decision made that morning would quietly change the direction of both of your stories. Don't skip this moment. A meeting was rescheduled. A familiar route was unexpectedly changed. A simple invitation that could easily have been declined was accepted instead. None of those choices seemed important at the time. Yet looking back, every one of them became another piece of a beautiful story that only God could fully see. What once appeared to be random events slowly revealed themselves as moments filled with purpose. When your paths finally crossed, there was nothing spectacular about the setting. It wasn't surrounded by flashing lights or extraordinary circumstances. It was simply a quiet moment where two strangers exchanged a conversation filled with kindness and genuine respect. Yet something about that conversation felt different. It wasn't excitement alone. It was a sense of peace that invited both of you to listen more carefully, speak more honestly, and appreciate one another beyond first impressions. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. As the conversation continued, both of you discovered unexpected similarities. You had each walked through seasons of disappointment that taught compassion. You had each experienced unanswered prayers that strengthened faith. You had each learned that real love is not built on appearances, but on integrity, patience, humility, and the willingness to grow. Neither of you realized it at the time, but those shared experiences were quietly laying the foundation for a friendship rooted in understanding rather than assumption. The days that followed did not rush ahead like a fairy tale. Instead, they unfolded naturally. Every conversation revealed a little more trust. Every shared laugh replaced a little more fear. Every honest discussion built another layer of respect. Rather than trying to impress one another, you both chose authenticity. Rather than pretending to have all the answers, you chose humility. Those simple decisions became the strongest part of your growing connection. don't skip this part. One evening, after another meaningful conversation, the person you had come to appreciate quietly prayed, "Lord, thank you for teaching me that your blessings are often greater than my expectations. Help me never take this connection for granted. If this relationship is meant to continue, let it always reflect patience, kindness, truth, and the love you have been teaching me all along." That prayer wasn't about certainty, it was about trust. As weeks became months, both of you noticed something remarkable. The peace you felt together did not come from perfect circumstances. It came from choosing honesty over fear, forgiveness over resentment, and faith over anxiety. You encouraged one another to grow spiritually, celebrated each other's victories without jealousy, and remained present during difficult seasons without giving up. Little by little, the relationship became less about finding happiness and more about helping each other become the people God was shaping you to be. Stay until the very end because the greatest chapter has not yet been written. The next part will reveal the moment when both of you recognize that every closed door, every delay, every prayer, and every season of waiting had been preparing your hearts, not for a perfect life, but for a faithful partnership built on love, grace, hope, and a shared commitment to walk through every season together with God at the center. My beloved child, don't skip this part. Stay until the very end because the story is about to reveal the moment when faith becomes stronger than fear, and hope begins to replace every doubt that once lived in your heart. By now, both of you had come to understand that this connection was different from anything you had experienced before. It wasn't built on rushing emotions or unrealistic expectations. It was growing slowly, strengthened by honest conversations, quiet prayers, mutual respect, and the willingness to encourage one another through every season of life. Listen carefully, because the next chapter would test everything you had learned. Not long after your friendship became stronger, life presented new challenges. Unexpected responsibilities demanded your attention. Plans changed without warning. There were days when communication became less frequent, not because either heart cared less, but because both of you were carrying responsibilities that required wisdom and patience. At times, the silence felt familiar, almost reminding you of old fears. Yet something inside had changed. Instead of assuming the worst, both of you chose trust. Instead of allowing anxiety to speak louder than truth, you remembered the honesty that had already been shared. Don't skip this moment. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, your soulmate quietly knelt beside their bed and prayed, "Lord, thank you for bringing this person into my life. Help me never allow fear, pride, or misunderstanding to damage what you are teaching us to build. Teach me to love with patience, to speak with kindness, to listen with compassion, and to remain faithful even when the future is uncertain." That prayer wasn't asking for an easy road. It was asking for the strength to walk faithfully through every season. Meanwhile, you found yourself reflecting on the journey that had brought you here. Looking back, you realized how much you had changed. The person who once feared rejection had become someone willing to communicate openly. The heart that once carried the weight of past disappointments had discovered the freedom that comes through forgiveness. You understood that real love isn't proven only in joyful moments. It is revealed by the way two people treat one another when life becomes difficult. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. As the weeks passed, every challenge became another opportunity to strengthen your relationship rather than weaken it. You celebrated each other's victories without jealousy. You encouraged one another during moments of exhaustion. When misunderstandings appeared, you chose honest conversations instead of silent assumptions. When one of you felt discouraged, the other offered hope instead of criticism. Little by little, your relationship became a place of peace where both hearts could grow without pretending to be perfect. One quiet afternoon, while walking together through a peaceful park, your soulmate stopped and smiled. They looked around at the ordinary beauty of the day, the trees gently moving in the breeze, children laughing in the distance, and the warm sunlight breaking through the clouds. Then they softly said, "I used to think I needed extraordinary moments to know I was blessed. Now I realize the greatest blessing is finding someone who makes ordinary days feel extraordinary simply by being present." Those words stayed with you long after the conversation ended. Don't skip this part. Later that evening, the two of you talked about your hopes for the future. You didn't speak about perfection. You spoke about building a home filled with kindness, honesty, prayer, laughter, forgiveness, and unwavering support. You dreamed of facing life's joys and hardships together, always remembering the lessons learned during your seasons of waiting. Both of you understood that lasting relationships are not built in a single unforgettable moment, they are built through thousands of faithful choices made day after day. As the stars filled the night sky, an overwhelming sense of gratitude settled over both of your hearts. You realized that every delay had taught patience. Every disappointment had produced wisdom. Every unanswered prayer had strengthened faith. Looking back, neither of you wished to erase the difficult chapters anymore because those very chapters had prepared you to appreciate the blessing of finding each other. Stay until the very end because the final chapter is almost here. The next part will reveal the beautiful conclusion of this journey, a celebration of God's faithfulness, two hearts united through grace, and a future built not on perfect circumstances, but on enduring faith, genuine love, and the daily choice to honor one another with humility, compassion, and unwavering commitment. My beloved child, don't skip these final words. Stay until the very end because this is the chapter where every prayer, every tear, every delay, and every lesson finally reveals its purpose. There were countless moments when you believed God had forgotten your heart. You wondered why others seemed to receive the blessings you had prayed for while your own season of waiting continued. But now, standing at the end of this journey, you finally understand something beautiful. God was never saying no. He was lovingly saying, not yet. He was preparing two hearts before bringing them together. Listen carefully, because what happened next became a testimony of faith, hope, and enduring love. As your relationship continued to grow, both of you realized that what brought you together wasn't luck or perfect timing, it was the work God had been doing in each of your hearts long before you met. Every disappointment had taught compassion. Every closed door had taught trust. Every unanswered prayer had strengthened your faith. Looking back, you could see that even the painful chapters had become stepping stones leading you toward a future neither of you could have imagined. Don't skip this moment. One quiet evening, the two of you sat beneath a sky filled with stars, reflecting on everything you had experienced. Your soulmate gently held your hand and said, "There were days when I questioned why God made me wait. Now I know the answer. If we had met earlier, we might not have recognized the gift we were being given. We both needed time to grow, to heal, and to become the people we are today. Tears filled your eyes because deep inside, you knew those words were true. In that peaceful moment, you bowed your heads together and offered a simple prayer of gratitude. Lord, thank you for every season of waiting. Thank you for every lesson that strengthened our faith. Thank you for teaching us that your plans are always wiser than our own. Help us to love each other with patience, humility, kindness, and faithfulness. Let our relationship always reflect your grace, and may our home become a place where peace, forgiveness, and compassion are never in short supply. As the prayer ended, an overwhelming sense of peace settled over both of your hearts. This changes everything. The future you built together was never based on perfection. There were still challenges to face and decisions to make, but you faced them side by side. When one of you felt weak, the other offered encouragement. When misunderstandings appeared, honest conversations replaced silence. When life became difficult, prayer became your foundation instead of fear. Day by day, your relationship grew stronger because it was rooted in trust, respect, forgiveness, and a shared desire to honor God in the way you loved one another. Years later, people often asked how your story began. You would both smile and answer, "It began long before we ever met." It began when God started changing our hearts. Those words reminded everyone who heard them that the greatest miracle wasn't simply finding each other. The greatest miracle was allowing God to shape each of you into people capable of loving with wisdom, grace, and unwavering commitment. Don't skip these final words. If this story has spoken to your heart, remember its greatest lesson. Seasons of waiting are not always seasons of absence. Sometimes they are seasons of preparation. Closed doors are not always rejection. Sometimes they are loving protection. And unanswered prayers are not always forgotten. Sometimes they are being prepared for a greater purpose than you can currently see. As the sun rose on a new day, the two of you walked forward hand in hand, grateful for every step of the journey that had brought you together. The waiting had been worth it. The healing had been worth it. Every prayer had been heard. Every lesson had shaped your hearts. What once felt like a lonely road had become a beautiful path filled with faith, hope, joy, and enduring love. And with God at the center of your lives, every new sunrise became a reminder that His timing is always perfect, His plans are always good, and the most beautiful chapters are often the ones we must patiently wait to receive.